We are live with Alanah
Yeah.
Nichole and this week's episode of Monday Motivation. And we are excited because she is an amazing human being. And we are so honored and thrilled to have her on here. Say hi to the people, Alanah.
Hello, people. My name is
Oh,
Alanah. Ashley
yeah,
so graciously introduced me. I like to believe that I'm also an amazing human, so I'd like to affirm that.
yeah.
So thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Yes. And so, like we normally do, we're going to hop straight into the interview, but we're going to take a second to chat after this interview is over. So, let's ask the first question. So, what drew you to the arts and made you want to work to enact social change in your community and beyond?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have been in the arts for a very long time, probably 20 years now. I think if we're including like all the times that I was in
Yeah.
performance art camps and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I was born in the Bronx, New York, and my mother, she always, had me in the latest camps, and we used to go cross boroughs, to better schools with arts programs and language programs. So I've always, very much been into arts. And then as I got older, I became enamored with like the written and spoken word, and so I started to do some more performances in the DMV area and even beyond that, and fell in love with what it meant to be an artist. And then I noticed that as an artist, you face a lot of adversity, and
Yeah.
so with adversity comes advocacy, and so there's my entry point into arts advocacy.
Yes. And so I just want to ask a side question. You mentioned that your mom got you really involved in the arts at a young age. And I know you are a mother. So how would you advise mothers to get their children involved in the arts, especially
Yeah.
the younger they are?
Absolutely. I mean, just I think being encouraging over anything, and let me mute that. I think being encouraging over anything is what's important. I think what is a common denominator in many artists that I myself included is that we were allowed to have these imaginative childhoods.
Yes.
My mother didn't limit me a lot with what my thought patterns were, or ways, that I went about doing things. If I didn't know something, I had to go ask a question out loud to adults, even, so I wasn't like prohibited in any way from that kind of like conversational functionality that I think a lot of artists learn to have in the world, like hosting or, things like that, I think are derived directly of those types of skills.
Yeah.
So first that, and camps, and any arts programs you can find, Google it, whatever town you're in, whatever city you're in, they're available to you.
Yes. So it's always good to take advantage of those. Take advantage of the resources in your community because they're there for you to use. So
They are.
let's move on to the next question. So what drew you to serving, organizing events, and consulting for small businesses and nonprofits?
You said what drew me to it?
Yes, what drew you to that?
Yeah, I was kind of pulled into it.
Okay.
I was very much and have always very much been a free spirit. And I always love to operate on my own, right? Just even growing up, in Baltimore, mostly in Baltimore County, most people think, well, I'm from, like I said, originally New York, but I do have some city influence as an adult, but not necessarily as a child.
Right.
But I was expelled from school at about 16. So from that point, I'm self-taught. I hadn't gone to university or anything like that, and so I was always just kind of like very explorative, and just out in the world. And I started to meet people through a lot of the events and things that I was doing. I started doing events. Well, first I started going to events. I think a lot of people don't talk about this journey. You go to events and it is just magical. I mean, watching the host up front, watching the procession of events, wondering how you can be involved. Everybody starts off as a spectator, even some, sports greatest people, they start off as, being in the stands when they're young or watching from home. And so I always watch movies like Love Jones. I always watch movies like Brown Sugar, When Did You Fall in Love with Hip Hop? Those
Yeah.
types of things really influence who I am as a person.
Mm.
And so I went on into, community organizing and activism. And through that, people started saying, well, you're really good at making flyers, or you're really good at, putting events together. And so people would, hire me here and there. And at first I was, very broken, inefficient in my way of moving in the world. As an artist, I didn't know what it meant, and so I started to, as I started to collect those skills, I wanted to tell more people about them. And so it's just been a beautiful butterfly effect of building skills and, learning ways to monetize art and passing that
Yeah.
along.
That's so amazing. So awesome. We're going to get back to some movie questions towards the end of this conversation, for sure.
That's good.
We're going to get into that. So tell us how you came to work for NPR, and then how did you start performing poetry? What was that experience like when you first came?
Totally. So I started performing poetry out loud
Yes.
to people probably 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I first started doing that just from reading off of my phone. I
Yeah.
would, jot down different thoughts, and a lot of my work, as a lot of people know, is about love and relationships, and just like my experiences, as a Black woman, as a darker skinned woman, as a plus size woman,
Yes.
and I feel like it's not a story that's often told, and a lot of people think that there's just no story there, and that's just not the truth.
It's not the case.
So, I started writing a lot of notes in my phone and things like that. And so I would go out to open mics, in 2015, 2014.
Okay.
Some of the first open mics I ever went to was 2008. But I had never performed at that point. It was just too scary. And I think everybody has that. I don't know if everybody does, but I know I did. I had that point of just being scared and like being a patron, but not, necessarily being a participant of the arts.
Yes. Okay. And so what are your top 3 favorite moments from your career in the arts?
Absolutely. So I missed a part of that question, so I'm going to go back to
NPR, yeah.
the NPR, and then I can tell you the top 3.
Okay.
So with NPR, I got involved with them because there was this opportunity to present Spotlight on Station North, which is a segment of a show, very short segment of a show that Nathan Sterner does over at WYPR, which is our local to Baltimore NPR station.
Okay.
Through my work as a consultant with Impact Hub Baltimore and Motor House Baltimore, I was afforded the opportunity to go down to the station to record, these short segments. And I figured it would just be one, but I ended up doing maybe over a dozen of them in 2019 over into 2020. So it was really cool, to be in the station. It's a very retro station.
Really?
I love the aesthetic. It's like very mid-century modern. Makes you feel like an old ad man. It's very cute.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so the next question was, what are 3 of your top favorite moments from your career in the arts?
Top 3 moments. Okay. I would say Artscape. I can't remember what year it was, but whatever year TLC was there.
Okay.
So I've always had involvement the past couple of years, maybe since 2017, with Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts, and they are our local arts council. So every part of Maryland has its own arts council, and every section of Baltimore pretty much has its own arts and entertainment district. And so BOPA kind of oversees some of those large, scale festivals like Artscape, like City, Baltimore Book Festival. And so I was afforded the opportunity back in 2017 for the first time, I think, to either volunteer or do some very low-level production assistant work with Light City and Neighborhood Lights. And then I think going from there, all of my roles kind of scaled up. And so I was afforded the opportunity to be very, very close to both T-Boz and Chili. And just very upfront. And I was just singing all the songs and touch my hand. And, the work was fun, but overall it was just like exciting to be so close and to be just to have like the degrees of separation between you and these people that you grew up listening to. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember, moving here from the Bronx, like I said, in the early 90s, and, being in my family's cars, listening to them. So it was
Yes.
kind of surreal to have been so close. I would say that's number one.
Okay.
Well,
That's a big
maybe
number one. We'll take it. We'll take it.
I mean, maybe number three. Like, I'm sure there's some other exciting things I could think about.
Sure.
Do you want me to list the other two now?
Yeah, let's add it to now.
Okay. Let me think. Okay.
You want to come back to him?
Huh?
You want to come back to him?
Yeah, let's do another question and then I can tell you another one.
Sure. So why, in your own words, do you think it's so important for Black women to see and hear women who are just like them represented in the media?
Okay. I mean, we have to, and this is a line from one of my mentors. We have to we have to own and tell our own narratives. Oftentimes with like Black women in the arts and the media, arts and culture, we become this monolith. You know what I mean? People want to think of us as just being this very one solid woman, as if it's just one type of woman. We all have flat tummies and we all have this look, and and that's just the farthest thing from the truth.
Right.
Some of the most influential women I've ever met barely have Instagram. They don't even have more than 100 followers. They don't, have flat tummy tea. They don't have all of the, and so I think as we progress, into the digital age, it's super important for us to be controlling our own narratives. And as a sidebar, I came in culture through a lot of the men that have been in my life over the long haul, really. And because of that, I realized how male-centric arts and culture can be, and how they often kind of take over, the screen and the opportunities and all that good stuff. You got to be loud and you got to be out front, to get recognized.
Let's look at comedy. In the world of comedy, it's very male dominated. You have very few female entertainers in the comic industry who are really prominent. Yes. You have like the Wanda Sykes, very loud, like you said, very in your face. And she's old. We have like on Instagram and YouTube, we have Daphne Springs, very loud, very confrontational, very in your face. Amanda Seales. So. We're finding that narrative being created, and we need to change that.
We have to change it. I mean, if we don't speak up, then we'll forever be behind the scenes, and like the guys will take all the credit, and we don't want that. So,
no. Black girls rock, right? So we need some of that magic, some of that Black girl magic,
right?
Displayed on the big screen.
Yes, we do.
And so, tell me, from your career as a social organizer, what is one of your favorite moments?
Yeah, so as in organizing, it's crazy. I never really see myself think that somebody's pointing to think that I'm only in the beginning of my career.
Yes.
It's just surreal. You know what I mean? One opportunity that I was afforded opportunity, and the other thing I want to emphasize for anybody that's watching who might be in the beginning of their journey, is just not to be afraid to take things that you feel maybe you're better than or whatever. Like, there's no such thing. So, one entryway into an opportunity with me and Red Bull was I did craft. And for anyone who doesn't know what craft is, it's basically just getting food and water for people who, are actually in the program.
Okay.
So I have a mentor who kind of introduced me to some folks who were a part of an experienced production company, who were coming to Baltimore to do a festival called Red Bull Amafico Festival, which happened in 2017 and 2018. And so in 2017, my job was, I got a minivan. I was supposed to pick up like Red Bulls and cheese and crackers and set it all up, for people who were coming in town. I would go to the airports and pick them up.
Okay.
I would do all types of little odds and ends jobs. And then, that summer, that was early that year, and that summer, I was afforded the opportunity to be a production assistant with a little bit more, creative autonomy. And so I
Okay.
was able to like get decor and, kind of design some of the rooms that were happening in the
Awesome.
spaces. I was afforded the opportunity to do meditation, and this is with like they have this cohort of fellows from all over the country, and so I was able to meet so many people even beyond that, all over the globe. I met
Wow.
people from South Africa, from
Wow.
London. I met people from all over, and I've maintained relationships with some of those people, and it's just been what a wild ride. But all of that from just agreeing to
Yeah.
drive the minivan and get the crackers. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. They say the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes. And so, who are some of your heroes and sheroes?
some of my heroes. I would say my first hero, nonetheless, and not to be redundant, but my mother. You know what I'm saying? Like, she truly, 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 I would not be the woman that I am today. I wouldn't have any of what I have today if it not had been for Leslie Denise Creaky Davis. She is probably one of the best people I've ever met. She's also a Scorpio, so we get along very well. I'm Scorpio. I didn't say it already. Um, there's nothing like finding understanding in another Black woman, and
Yeah.
so that's what she's become to me. You come to this point in your adulthood where you have to humanize your parents,
Yeah.
and understand. Even as a parent myself, I don't know what I'm doing half the time, and to realize that at some point, and even points in recent time where maybe she just doesn't know.
Yeah.
And, so it's beautiful to know that someone took a chance as big as creating and raising someone like me.
Yeah.
So that's one. And then I could give you another hero.
Sure.
Um, let me think. Let me think. Let me think.
Well, I just want to say about moms while you're thinking, like moms, when you're
Yeah,
growing up, sometimes with daughters, we bump heads a little bit, you know what I mean? Depending on the mother-daughter relationship. But like you said, once you become older,
right,
you get more mature, you start to understand the sacrifices that your mother has made for you. Whereas you might not have seen them before, or you might not
right.
recognize them before. And then as you step into motherhood, you start to see the sacrifices you make for your children as well. And it takes on new meaning for you.
Exactly. I definitely see how much, of a sacrifice it takes to be a mother after, of course, having two children.
Yeah.
So, it's so much more easy to see how magnificent of an opportunity it is to, put your all into a person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So true, so true. What would you tell yourself if you could go back and have a conversation at the beginning of your career with young you?
Oof. I mean, again, like I'm a couple years in, but I've definitely grown, tremendously. And
Right.
I had a really important conversation earlier today
Okay.
with someone who I'm like, in the beginning stages of an opportunity with. And,
Okay.
I think I can think of myself as an emotional collaborator. And that's how I would describe it now. But really what that means is I'm real hot blooded. I can get very angry very quick,
Okay.
and I can get very emotional about things. And it has a lot to do with how passionate I am about
Yeah.
my work and my life's work. This is what I believe in the
Right.
most. I wake up, I think about arts and culture. I wake up, I think about how I can make it better. So, when I get into a room and you put me against a wall about it,
Hmm.
whew, I used to get so hot.
Well,
I used to just get so angry and so passionate about it. So if I could talk to my younger self, I would, give her a little bit more patience.
yeah.
And, I'm glad that I was able to problem solve my way through some of those blow ups. But, if I could have done it less, what would that have meant? So I could go
Yeah.
back and do that. But there's no mistakes either. So
No, there's not.
yeah.
And every step that we've taken in our journey has gotten us to where we are today. So we can't look back. All we can do is look forward and continue to improve. But I was just curious what you would say if you could say something to yourself.
Yeah. I would say calm down, youngin. That's what I would say.
Yes. Hey. So with your youngins and with everything that you've got going on, how has the quarantine affected you, and how have you attempted to impact others during this time frame?
Yeah, I definitely well, first, I think the first step in taking steps towards impact to impact anybody else's life is to make sure that you have stability in your own. And so,
Yes.
the first thing I can do to impact anybody's life is get sleep.
Yes.
And then, some of the second things I can do is make sure that I'm stocked up on lavender oil, and, vegetables, and,
Yes.
rose waters for my face, and
Good.
oils. And you saw
Self-care.
me doing all of this before we got on because it's so important for me to maintain that balance for myself. Like, I will go crazy because I love to help people.
Yes.
So one of the biggest ways that I was able to help people, through all of like the novel coronavirus stuff is, I started a fund back on March 13th.
Mhm.
I woke up and I was just kind of like, you know what? I know that I'm going to struggle through this, and I know that a great many are going to struggle through this as well. Because when you're a creative and you're a gig worker, you rely solely on a lot of based revenue. All
Yes.
that is just contract-based revenue, and all that is just like from month to month. You might have a 3-month contract. Some people were about to start a contract. Some people were
Yes.
in the middle of one. Some people were, had 19 in an upwards of 40 to 100 events scheduled,
Yes.
from March to April,
Yes.
and tour scheduled. And so I knew, that they were going to be facing postponements and cancellations. And so I started a fund with $100 of my own money. That $100 got split into $50 between 2 artists. And I started a Google form that was available through my Instagram bio. You can still see the form on my website
Yes.
at AlanahNichole.com if anybody wants to look at the form itself, because a lot of people have asked me, well, how did you do it? And what were the questions? And I reviewed well over 100 applications, and was able to grant, I think, about 133 people a micro grant anywhere between $25 to $100.
Amen.
Um, and that was it was a blessing, to kind of see that through.
Yes.
And, I had the support of close friends, and my family, my immediate family, at that time. So, yeah.
That is so awesome. And I want to stop from Invest Olive LLC to you to thank you for the work that you're doing in the community, in the arts community, in the social, justice community. Everything that you're doing in the community is so important. And that's why I wanted to highlight you, because the work you're doing.
Thank you.
So now let's get to
Thank
the
you.
fun questions. Let's have a conversation. We get the questions out the way. So we mentioned films earlier in our conversation.
Yeah.
So what do you think are we're going to pick 3 of the top most important Black films that have been released in the past 10 years?
In the past 10 years?
In the past 10 years. So recent. Keep it recent.
Keep it recent.
Let's say 20 years. Let's say 20 years.
Okay, better. Okay.
Not 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah, I think, and this is probably even more than 20 years.
But sure, let's do it.
But I mean, like, my top favorite films for sure, Brown Sugar.
Brown
like
Sugar. Okay.
Sanaa Lathan adjacent Morris Chestnut,
Yes.
in a very steamy love movie, about unrequited love, with which I'm very familiar.
Yes.
And it was just, what a beautiful story to be told about 2 Black, professionals in the arts and culture world, no less. So it was just definitely one of the first movies I saw where I was like, these are the people I want to be like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And definitely Love and Basketball.
Very
I used
important.
to watch. Oh, very important, very pivotal.
Critical.
Again, Sanaa Lathan adjacent. What is
Omar
his
Epps.
name? Omar Epps.
Omar.
And again, a very steamy, coming of age story, which I love a good coming of age story.
Yeah.
About 2 Black people who are just falling in love and trying, to watch them separate and get back together, to go to school and all that good stuff. What a beautiful story. So I love that story.
Yes. And number 3.
Number 3, Medicine for Melancholy, which
Okay.
a lot of people are not familiar with.
Right.
But it's an indie film, and it has an actor in it. His name is Wyatt Cenac. He's also a comedian.
Okay.
But the film is about a one-night stand. But it just has so many nuances in it, and I encourage anybody who's watching to go watch it. You should watch it. It's a beautiful story, like I said, about a one-night stand, between two people who really shouldn't be with each other. But that's all I'll give.
Okay. Well, we got to check it out. That's all that means.
That's all it means.
Yes. Okay. And so you are a love and relationship spoken word artist.
Yes.
So what love advice do you have to give to singles during COVID-19?
Oh, I would say, take a breath, because I'm a single, during COVID-19. But I do, I'm in the thick of it right now, and it can be a lot. So I would just say be patient with yourself. I think there are moments in time, especially as a Black woman, where you're starting to compare the validity of like who you are and whether or not you have a man or have a woman or whatever your preference is. And you're more than that. You're more than who you date, and you're more than what your Instagram feed reads as, because I talk about this a lot, but there's this thing called sensationalism, where people tell stories from the angle of, and this is what they do in journalism or in news, you tell stories from the angle of what people want to see. So a lot of people who are in relationships right now are showing us what we want to see, not what is actually happening in their households. And so it's not as real as we could hope. And we should remain hopeful, at this time. If I can encourage anybody to remain hopeful and to remain with the things you want and see for yourself, not to become desperate. I have a very, very good friend who always says people be wilding for respect. And I would encourage that nobody be wilding for respect right now. Don't feel pressured to send nudes and, be doing all this wild stuff in order to get attention. So
that is a great amalgam of advice. We need all of that. Okay.
Yes.
And so now I'd like to open up questions from the viewers. Do our viewers have any questions for Alanah Nichole? So we got a couple of viewers on the live. We want to hear your questions. I've been asking some questions, so I want to hear questions from you. Do you have any questions? Yes. And while we're getting into questions, what would be, as we're closing out, what would be some words of motivation or inspiration? What would you like to leave our audience with on this week's episode of Monday Motivation?
Yeah, so I like to leave everybody with this affirmation. It's an affirmation that I used, for a long time and continue to use. I used to post it every single day on my Facebook. And that phrase is, I am worthy and deserving of the love that the universe has for me. And to start with me, I did a workshop with a beautiful Black woman who is actually based in New York, who came here for an exhibition. But she's awesome. She's expecting right now, so positive energy for her. But she really helped me to get some words for myself that I could say. So I think being specific, both in prayer and meditation, is very important. So if you could find words for yourself, then find them. But if not, start there. It's, I am worthy and deserving of the love that the universe has for me.
Amen. All right. And how can we find you on social media? How can we follow you and support your movement?
Yes, absolutely. You can follow me on mostly everything at Alanah Nichole. You can find me with those two names, ALANAHNICHOLE. You can find me on Twitter at Alanah Says. You can find me on Instagram at Alanah Has Entered the Chat. You can keep up to date with all of my, upcoming events and even my social media at my website, AlanahNichole.com or AlanahHasEnteredTheChat.com. I bought both domains, so don't try it.
There we go. Well, this has been an amazing, amazing, amazing episode of Monday Motivation. I want to thank you so much, Alanah, for coming on and speaking with us today, dropping those nuggets of wisdom, sharing your life with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for reaching out. I'm so glad we got to chat.
Yes, for sure. So this has been an episode of Monday Motivation, y'all. We are out. Yeah.